Hi, I'm Rhonda Pick, Managing Editor of Pig Health Today. Joining me is Dr. Lee Johnston, Professor of Swine Nutrition and Management at the University of Minnesota Morris. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk a little bit about piglet birth weights and piglet litter sizes and that sort of thing. Let's just start out with a simple question. What are average litter sizes in the U.S. herd today?
Well, litter sizes have been increasing over the last couple decades, and which is a good thing because we've got more pigs to market from the inputs into the sow and the system. So litter sizes is not uncommon to have 14, 15, 16 live-born pigs. In our research herd at the university, we had a litter of 22. That was a big discussion, but now that's not so uncommon. That's probably a few too many for us, but yeah, we get upwards of 14, 15, 16 pigs per litter. That's pretty common.
Okay, so what would be some of the the flip side of larger litter sizes and seeing, you know, the trend with some lower lightweight piglets?
Right.
What is an average viable size pig these days?
Well, the problem when we get really large litters is there's only so much room in that uterus to develop those pigs, and the machinery, so to speak, placenta and the
Yep.
uterus side to supply nutrients. And so as we get bigger pigs, typically we get lower birth weights. And when we get lower birth weights, that means that some of those pigs are going to be less viable. And there's probably 4 or 5 data sets that have been published in the scientific literature would suggest that as birth weight declines, prewean mortality increases, and then at a point about 1 kilo of body weight, 2.2 pounds, somewhere in there, give or take a little bit, prewean mortality increases tremendously as birth weight declines past that to lower. So pigs less than a kilogram or 2.2 pounds at birth really have a tough time surviving through to weaning because of a variety of reasons. They're just not real viable pigs. In some cases, you get low enough, it's 100% mortality on those very small pigs. So that's the downside of getting very large litters, is we get smaller average birth weights and we tend to get more of these very little pigs that aren't as viable.
And the lighter weight pigs mortality ranges you're seeing?
Oh, I mean, there's reports in the literature that mortality could be as bad as 100%, and you know, on a good case, maybe 40%, 50%. So, of course, there's a range from 1 kilogram down to, you know, that'd be 1,000 grams, down to 400 grams. You know, those 400 gram pigs are not going to make it, so that's 100% on them. Yep. So the point is the curve on increase in mortality is very steep once you get below 1 kilogram. So we want to try to keep all those pigs above 1 kilogram in birth weight.
If we're talking about lightweight pig, you know, more lightweight pigs, higher mortality rates associated, what do the economics look like from a profitability of the herd standpoint? Are there correlations you've been looking at there?
Well, we've done some economics tied to some of the studies we've done.
Yep.
The challenge is when you have these low birth weight pigs, obviously you've got roughly 4 months invested in that piglet at birth, and when they just up and die, you've got nothing to market for that 4 months. Or they're so small that you euthanize them. The other challenge is, in some data sets, those low birth weight pigs tend to be a drag on the system clear out to market weight, so they'll be lighter at market at a standard age, they might be fatter, they might have lower lean percentage in the carcass, so the opportunity to produce a full value pig declines. Doesn't show up in all cases, but just because the pig is a low birth weight pig doesn't mean that it's destined for that. There are some that will compensate, and we did some work looking at a large data set retrospectively and found that if pigs in the lactation phase during suckling, if they were some of the faster growing pigs, they could kind of compensate, or the low birth weight would be mitigated so that they would perform very much like their heavier counterparts. But if they grew slow in the nursery, in the lactation period, they had trouble catching up.
So that lactation period is very
Lactation
critical.
period is very important. You'll hear, see some researchers talk about that the weaning weight is more important than the birth weight for the lifetime performance of the pig. Our data would suggest that both have an influence.
Okay. How about caregivers that are taking care of, these small pigs? Do you find that that's particularly challenging for them from a, frustration of seeing a lot of high mortality, or just extra handling? What does that look like?
People that work in swine units, they're wired to save pigs, to produce pigs, and it's very difficult for them to see pigs flounder, difficult for them to, as a matter of fact, euthanize those small pigs. It's hard to have somebody, we save pigs, but then we flip the switch and say, yeah, but we got to euthanize some of these. That's a hard switch to make, hard for me to make as well. So there's those challenges. There's the hassle factor of depending on how you're going to manage those pigs, whether it was through cross-fostering, whether it's rescue decks, whether it's any number of supplements or different strategies, microenvironment management and those kind of things. It just increases the hassle factor, and when it's not 100% successful, then there's frustration. A lot of farms have gone to 24/7 care, so they have somebody there, get those pigs off to a good start and optimize those chances. So the people factor is an important one too, and particularly when you put, one of the speakers at the conference here today talked about urgency. When you got a newborn, everything is urgent. And it's not like, well, I'll get back to you 6 or 8 hours when I have a little more time. That's not an option. 6 or 8 hours might be, they might be gone by then. So staffing is important, the mentality of the people, the passion, how many hours in the day there are. And so all those are challenges with these small pigs.
So if we take a step back and look at how did we arrive at lighter birth weight pigs, the most common, it's somewhat correlated to larger litter size, but how does nutrition play a role in that?
Well, that's what we've been kind of working on. There's been a laundry list of things that nutritionally have been tried to try to mitigate the problem, fix it, higher energy and protein intakes, specific amino acids, yeast products, trace minerals, a variety of things, and it's kind of a hit and miss thing. There's not been a magic bullet. So a lot of the discussion and focus has been around a subject called fetal imprinting, the way to basically you're feeding the sow in a way that feeds the piglet in utero to set that pig up for lifetime performance. And we've just finished a study looking at zinc nutrition of sows and found some pretty exciting results in that we could decrease whole herd prewean mortality by about 3 percentage points just by feeding very high zinc levels in the last, from day 75 of gestation on. There was reports in the literature. We were able to replicate those results. Now we're scratching our head and saying, oh, why did that happen? And so we're trying to figure out what's the mechanism, and maybe we can hit on something that we can routinely do to provide a pig with the proper birth weight, but also is robust enough in these larger litters to go through from birth to harvest and be very productive and give us a full value pig that's of value to the farmers economically.
And specifically with the recent study that you conducted, you said you started feeding 75 days into gestation with the
Yes.
with the zinc, and were you testing multiple levels, or what does that look like?
Well, basically we took the farm's current sow gestation diet,
Yep.
and that was at about 125 parts per million of zinc. We added extra zinc to get to 365 parts per million, and then a third level that was actually almost 600 parts per million zinc, fed it for that short period, and found this improvement in pre-wean survival. And then we followed a portion of those pigs clear to harvest and found that there was no difference in post-weaning mortality. Lean gain, growth rates and all that were the same across treatments and across pretty much across birth weights groups as well. So we're kind of excited about what that means. There's a couple studies now that show similar results now that we got ours. And the early study, nobody had replicated it. We were able to replicate it. So now we're kind of trying to delve into it and say, well, why did that happen? And we actually have some colleagues in human nutrition that are very interested in it, as well as the sow being a model for human pregnancies and trace mineral nutrition in human pregnancies.
So what would be a couple of key takeaways you would have for pork producers based on your recent research findings?
The way we did it was not very practical, and we know that. So right away farmers saying, well, you did it from day 75 gestation until farrowing. Can I just feed high zinc the whole way through? Well, we don't know. We haven't studied that. We don't know if timing is really important. We don't know exactly what dose and what time, and so there's a lot of things. Some people are trying some things, but to really give firm conclusions, we need to do more work and understand. We use zinc sulfate. Well, we assume it's the zinc, but it could be the sulfate. So now we need to do a study where we have zinc oxide and zinc sulfate and kind of parse that out. And so a lot of work yet to be done. And then why does it happen? We have some ideas that we've proposed, and if those pan out, then maybe we don't need to have the zinc at all. Maybe there's other things that we can do to influence placental efficiency or trace mineral status of the piglet, or the microbiome of the piglet. So lots of exciting things.
And finally, when you think about the lifetime performance of these smaller piglets, I think you mentioned before that you are seeing possibilities where those piglets can in fact catch up. What are some keys to success around piglets in that area?
Well, I think those small pigs, our studies seem to indicate, and it would be consistent with a lot of other work, that the first weeks of the pig's life are really important. In various veins, you can look at different studies, looking at different kinds of things, but though that suckling period, getting the pig off to a good start, getting them the gut functioning, the immune system functioning. I had an old timer tell me one time that says, a pig never gets over a good start. And I think if you keep that in mind and trying to get those pigs off to a good start, they'll be more robust and be able to be productive throughout their life till harvest.